Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to another video on building a motorcycle apparel company when I know nothing about the apparel industry. This week is all about setbacks, uniquely. Some positives at the end, so I'll try to throw those in and actually give you some teasers as to some things that we're working on. But this was kind of my first major setback in this whole process, and I want to talk about that and the goal. So the goal of creating this project, one thing that excited me to kind of give you weekly updates as I'm trying to do this is it holds me accountable. So I think that's really important, is that I have to accomplish things in order to create the content to give you a weekly update. So it's a way to kind of hold myself accountable. Second is that if anybody out there is interested in starting their own business or doing their own thing or really kicking it off, but there's so many questions in their mind, to be able to see somebody go through from just I've never done this before, I know nothing about it, so how do we go from an initial idea to actual creation and going live, that hopefully it gives you a roadmap and you can learn from my experiences so that it becomes easier for you. Now, with that, there is going to be setbacks, and this is a setback that I've talked a lot about in my other videos, and it hit me hard. And I knew at one point it probably would come, but this one hit me harder than I expected. So what exactly was that setback? It was really actually a big mental setback. And I think mental setbacks and the mental aspect of achieving anything is probably the hardest piece. And I've talked a lot about throughout this process of this idea of paralysis through analysis. So you start thinking about all the things that need to happen in order to achieve this goal, and it's becomes way too daunting. Especially in my mind, it's there's just too much stuff. I don't have enough money. I don't have all the things. It's just too much. I'm not even going to start. And so then you never start. And that whole mental mindset of just too many things to accomplish hit me pretty hard this week. So how did I come to that? Because I've talked about it before and I've tried to be really, really aware and really conscious of it. So how did it still catch me off guard? So I talked about I'm going through this business incubator process. They always talk about dreaming really big because generally we set the bar too low. So I started doing some general market research, looking at how many adventure motorcycles and dual sport motorcycles are sold in the US, and then thinking to myself, okay, what if we could just tap into 10% of that market? Just 10% of the people, not everybody. So the market's much bigger because some people will buy a bike and they'll ride that bike forever, but they still need new apparel. They're still looking for new things to enjoy that motorcycle. So thinking okay, well, let's just look at the market for new dual sport and adventure motorcycle buyers. What is that? How big is that market? And then saying, okay, what if I could tap into 10% of that market? How many total customers is that? And then working backwards a little bit more, saying, okay, well, what is the average ticket or transaction price when somebody in this market buys something from another company that would be doing something similar to what we're trying to do with 0 Mile? And then you get that figure and you look at the total numbers, at the total ticket value, average transaction, and you get your kind of total figure. And you're like, wow. So that's not a large market to go after. There seems like there's a lot of potential here. So that was kind of my initial goal. Okay, awesome. I think it would be really great to achieve this number and get to this 10% market share number. Then the next phase in this business incubator is okay, now let's set that goal for 3 years out. And this is where things got complicated. And it's actually a pretty smart process in that you look at okay, if 0 Mile wants to achieve 10% market share of this one specific market in 10 years, what do we have to do in 2 years to get to that 3-year mark, to that actual goal? And then what do we have to do in a year? What do we have to do in 6 months to reach a year? And then 3 months to reach 6 months, right? And then as I started looking at that, all of the things, right? It was I don't have enough cash, I don't have enough people, I don't have the right resources, all of the things running through my mind, it just became way too daunting to try to tackle. And what is ironic is about most of these things is it's dream big, and then when you work it backwards, you realize it simplifies the process. It's supposed to make it easier. But looking at the run up in 3 months, in 6 months to a year, there were so many moving pieces that it just became completely overwhelming. So much so that after I had gone through that part of the seminar or the coaching, or whatever you want to call it, it really kind of set me back for the entire evening. I was really like, man, is this possible, right? All the things. And I think this is what is important, is that if you're going to go through this, you're going to hit this part too, where you're like, is it actually possible? And you're going to doubt yourself. And it's really important, I think, to push through. So how did I push through? Like, how did I solve this problem? So I got to a point where I'm like, I don't know if the 0 mile turning this company is actually like, it's possible. And then I just thought, okay, maybe I am dreaming too big for 3 years, right? Maybe not too big in 5 years, maybe not too big in 10 years, but maybe in 3 years, that's too big. So I just cut it in half. I was like, okay, what if we can reach 5% market share in 3 years? And then I started working it back, and it actually became far more attainable. One thing that it did kind of like made me realize is that a lot of consumable goods produce a lot of stuff. Like if you're doing, if you have a decent market share in your industry, you're producing a lot of goods, and there are a lot of people involved, even if I cut that market share down to 5%. But it became much more attainable. But it also, at that point, then I had to take a step back. So I also had to take a step back. I slept on it. The next morning, after I had kind of like tackled all my emails and everything for the other business, had a few meetings, I sat down with a cup of coffee and I just started working through that list again and writing out all my concerns. Basically just like brain dumping like all of the things that seem really like daunting. So I'll read some of the thoughts that came to my mind. It seems a lot more daunting in the 3 to 6 months mark to be able to hit those goals. Like 3 months from now, we have to do a lot of things. 6 months from now, we have to do a lot of things. We need to speed up the workflow with my current guy who's my designer, like kind of manufacturing contact. Like that, this has to go much faster based on where we're at. I needed the website live like yesterday, and this becomes important because I need over 620 items to sell to people who actually want them. So not only do I have to make goods that people actually want to buy, but I need 620 people to actually buy them. And I need the samples ready so I can add those to the website and get those and start getting some interest about what we're doing. And I need to build an audience of roughly 7,000 people, but I need to do it quickly in order to reach that 3 to 6 months goal. So these are a lot of the things where I'm like, if I want to accomplish this in 6 months, these are a lot of things. Like my channel just barely crossed 1,000 subscribers. So I don't know how many actual viewers there are. It's probably an analytics tab in YouTube, and I could probably figure that all out, but I haven't. So maybe my audience is bigger than 7,000 people, and so maybe I have that there, and I can use this channel to communicate to people, but I still don't have like a list. I don't have like an email list to actually communicate to people and share like, hey, if you want to get on this early, here's the link to buy things. And so there just seemed like a lot of work to accomplish. And interesting enough, I have a social media person who helps me with my other businesses and been now helping me with this side of things. And she, I was like, how do we start achieving this list? And again, her response was like, we have to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, oh, like I just don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. So these are all the things that really set me back and were just kind of some of my worries. So then when I was like, all right, 3 years, let's not go so big. Let's simplify it. Let's make it easier. Let's just focus on building a viable company that doesn't have to be huge, but that's viable, gives people a great place to work, and we can do some really cool things. And then it became much more easy to swallow. All of these goals seemed much easier to accomplish because all of it seems so daunting. So when you cut it in half and you're like, okay, that's not so bad. That's not a lot easier. So my biggest learning thing from all of this is I knew it was coming. I knew that this was going to be a problem, and I have talked about it through these videos, and it still hit me. So I think the biggest thing, if anything I can say, when you start your own thing, and if you're doing you have your own journey, and you hit these mental roadblocks, don't give up. Maybe cut that in half. I always say, like with my current staff, if there's a big problem, like what's one thing that we can do today that just puts us in the right path to solving whatever problem you're facing right now? What's one thing that we can do? And a lot of times they hate it when I say that, right? Because their mind is running and like, you don't understand how big of a problem this is and like how upsetting this is. And so to stop and slow down, right? Because that's the other thing too, is like you have to slow down, which seems ironic because it seems like so many things had to speed up to make the goals happen. and just think of the one thing you can do. And for me it was, okay, let's cut this in half, let's work backwards. And then just by doing that, it made everything seem much easier. So that was my big setback for the week. Definitely was really daunting. Kind of one of those things where you kind of like want to throw the towel in, but you just, in that moment, I definitely wanted to throw the towel in. Like, there's too much to do, too many things. I have too many other responsibilities, and I have other business opportunities I'm working on. Like, there's just too much stuff. But cut it in half, started building that plan, started working forward. And I also have been struggling with another goal of building, and I think we'll talk about that next week. So what are some positives? So some positives are, is my manufacturing contact start working with a designer to get our tags designed. And this may seem really trivial, but it was just really exciting to see, like, and I'll share them here so you guys can see like what our hang tag is going to look like. So if you buy a shirt, the nice cardboard tag that's going to be hanging up, what is that going to look at? Like, what are the buttons going to look like? What are just like kind of all the little details, the inside tags? What are we going to do there? All of these little pieces, and to see those things starting to come to fruition, we're also really motivating to be like, oh, all of this work to this point, and we're actually like, we're getting some stuff. We're starting to see some results come from all the work put in at this point. So super excited. So if you've made it this long in this video, I hope it's encouraged you to do your own thing. And if you've had your own mental roadblocks and your own setbacks, just know that even somebody who has another business of their own that's running, like when you try to start another thing, it's not like it's just that much easier. You still come to these setbacks and these roadblocks, and you just got to push through, and you just got to keep simplifying it, make it easier, find ways to just get your mind right, because it's all a mental game, I think, mostly. So with that being said, subscribe, hit the like button, because as you heard, I need 7,000 people on a list to make this thing work. So if you want to help and you want to be a part of this, the best thing you do is just subscribe to the channel, which is super helpful. Leave all your nasty comments below. Tell me why I should have stopped, why this is the worst idea in the world. And until next time, stay safe out there.